Cards and Castles, bringing you guys a new series to the channel known as Meta Monthly. This one is going to be an interesting series. It's going to be a lot of discussion, primarily, where I'm going to just be talking to you guys about, well, the so-called meta, what decks I believe are some of the more dominant ones on the ladder right now, and where their strengths are, and possibly their weaknesses as well, to sort of examine how they can be properly countered, if at all. So, of course, this series is happening, or at least going to try to happen, on every 15th of the month, so that way we get a good look at the early portion of the current month and the latter portion of the previous month, to give us a nice time frame, because you never know, some things can change in between months. So I felt like in the middle of it is going to be, and 15 is sort of around the middle unless you do like 31 days, but that's sort of besides the point. So yeah, but before we start, I'm going to give two disclaimers right now. First being, these are going to be discussed in no particular order. The decks I talk about are going to sort of be just decks. They're not, I didn't classify them in any sort of ranking order of most powerful and whatnot, so that's disclaimer number one. Disclaimer number two, these are my personal opinions of what I think is sort of the dominant decks right now, and of course you can disagree with me. You don't have to agree, but I'm going to put in this video 3 decks that I think are some of the more dominant ones right now. So that being said, let's jump into deck number 1. And the first deck we're going to be talking about is going to be the Awaken decks. Now, they're still relevant, despite what some may say of them being off meta. They're sort of not. They're sort of still being played quite heavily, especially the purple-red variant. Their ability to, of course, continually powering them up with reawakened cards such as Saurus and Rite of Awakening, and with the Dojo, of course, powering them up, giving them that +1/+1, plus the continual reawaken, makes for some pretty nasty stats. And with the abilities of some of these cards, dealing damage, lowering or giving card discounts, becoming a tank, the list can go on. But it's certainly, it's clear to see why these decks are getting somewhat powerful. And of course, again, like I said, some of the strength lies in the continual reawakening, but especially in the purple variant, you have a lot of bouncing potential, and that's sort of something that's going around a lot right now. Balancing cards, taking them back into your hand, and being able to resummon them at full health, reusabilities, whatnot. And especially, you got cards out there like the Patient Study, return and draw. That's a pretty good combo there for 1 gold. You have cards like Vanishing Strike, the 3/4 stat, so you're hoping to trade out with something before you bounce, so like a hit and run tactic there. You've got Shadow Slip, returning all of the units in 1 swoop, and of course giving them all that 3 gold discount. That's pretty big. But especially one card that has been used a lot right now, and that's sort of Karasume. The combination of Karasume and Awakening is proving to be a pretty devastating combination of cards. With Sume, there is, no chance that an enemy is going to be bounced back. It says right there, return a random friendly unit. Ever since that change, Sume has become slightly more powerful in the sense that you now have a better chance of bouncing something that you want to bounce. Say, Maddie, for example, a pretty solid card to play with Karasume. The Maddie itself, 3 gold, and disappearing into, or the Karasume is a free Maddie essentially, so you're resummoning a random mage at no cost whatsoever to you. It's going to be that 0 gold from the discount, and you could pocket that as well for maybe later use in time. But in terms of Awakening, you have cards like, of course, Saurus being bounced. I'm trying to pull him up. I skipped too far ahead. Saurus being bounced, that's going to, reawaken continual units, or bouncing back the weaker units. Let me just type in to show you what kind of pool we're dealing with here. Mage Apprentice being bounced back. Masuta, Imp, the Wood War is very strong right now. The Wood War engine is still pretty powerful, despite the slight change to them. Them being bounced back protects them and gives them another chance with that 6 HP. Going to be pretty powerful. Books, 3 summon them for a free draw next turn. I've seen swords actually being played in a couple of decks, and I think that's because of that 4 movement and that 3 attack. If you're going to reawaken it, you're going to be bouncing this guy up to 8-4, if that's correct. Yeah, 2, yeah, 5, and okay, so it's going to be up to 8 attack if you reawaken this guy, and with the dojo out, it's going to get even stronger. I've even seen some experimentation with Badger. Badger's sort of like that slow, stealthy tank that no one sees coming, so I guess that can be pretty useful. But that's sort of where Sume's power lies, with the reusing of awakening abilities, and of course Saris re-triggering those awakening abilities if he's being bounced. So definitely a strong combination there, and one that's not, is being addressed. If you guys have seen, if you guys have heard, there has been talks of them giving changes to mages, so that should be pretty interesting to see what sort of changes affect the mages. So, with the Awakens moving no, I messed that up. With Awakens being taken care of, I think that's a great transition to give us, that gives us a good transition into deck number 2. And wouldn't you know it, to stay on sort of the course and topic of Karasume, deck number 2 is actually a purple-blue variant. Now, this variant has been around for a very long time. It's still probably like a favorite combo of some, and recently it's become more powerful with the stuff you can pull off with it. And sort of the main aspect here, unlike the Awaken purple-red deck, you're not focusing on Awaken, you're focusing solely on the bounce of units. So with Karasume, for instance, people are hoping to bounce back things like Maddie, which we talked about before. Let me just bring up, I know Judge, another popular one. That 3 damage that he does on initiative can be pretty strong, especially when paired up with the bounce of Karasume. Coming back into your hand for 2 gold, and boom, another 3 damage randomly. And it could target Castle as well. And then in the Vikings, you do have some sort of interesting aspects which complement the ninja's bounce. You have, I think, some people running a lot of freeze. I know Ice Weaving is a very popular freezing spell right now. You've got cards like, trying to find it, Frozen Storm. Karasume's a mage. You play that, and boom, a whole board is frozen. Pretty devastating. And even some Ice Blasts, which, compared to Frozen Storm, you're better off running Frozen Storm, but, putting in 2 of each, I guess, being a little experimental with that. And Ludicrous Strength, even though I've seen some plays on Ludicrous Strength, Karasume's and Ludicrous Strength to create this crazy 7-8 mage that's just going to keep bouncing your guy, his own guys back to make himself stronger or make his board stronger. So that's definitely something to look out for. Other than that, I think another prominent aspect of the ninjas that bring to the table, or another prominent aspect that ninjas bring to these decks are stealth, and that more specifically, you've got Kuro running around, and that could be a problem if you're going to beef him up with any sort of attack from Vikings, or maybe launch an E-Strike. I know some people like to throw in 2 E-Strikes instead of maybe 2 Ice Blasts because of the surprise Kuro can launch. Kunoichi's being at 4-5, that's pretty good right now. Despite that it's slow at 2 movement, the body still works out and pretty nicely. And of course, the Mystic Panda, which some people like to run because its stats are just 5-5. It's pretty nuts right now. So that's sort of what Viking ninjas bring to the table, and of course their sort of sneaky style can counteract the Awakened decks in the sense that they can't see where the stealth is moving. So that's sort of why it's become a popular choice. They're trying to hide their units to then attack the weakened, unsuspecting Awakened units. But yeah, I think it's definitely an old-time favorite, and one that clearly hasn't died out, which is interesting to see. Although to counter these guys, you probably want to, of course, bring some AoE. I know Special Delivery is nice right now. As a card, you can a massive area damage for 4 gold to really expose some of the stealth and whatnot. And then you've got probably Chain in general. Chain and AoE is what's going to be strong here against these guys, because you're going to expose their stealth units pretty easily. And other than that, get rid of the Karasume. The Karasume is where these powers are going to really lie from. They're carry a few extra bound spells, of course, nothing you can really do about that except to be prepared for them. And that's sort of, bringing your own spells to make sure that they die faster, bringing some removal with you, like Disintegrate. That's a great removal spell right now. And things like, you do have Murder as an option, you do have Mugging as an option. Murder is a little expensive at 6 gold, but if you're not running anything better in your 6 gold slot, maybe slip in 1 or 2 just as a backup, maybe. And then, yeah, I said Mugging, but Mugging's sort of up in the air. You're getting 1 gold, and it's going back into the hand anyway, so you're more likely helping them out with that Mugging, unless it's on Karasu, which, they have to spend 4 gold to resummon it. So it buys you a bit of time there. But other than that, a very strong deck type indeed, and one, like I said before, an old favorite that is sort of slowly rising in prominence as the meta moves forward. So that's quite interesting to see. With that being said, it gives us a nice little transition. I think I said that transition sentence twice right now, into our final deck of the video. And the final deck that we have for this video is going to be the Greed. Now, Greed has been pretty powerful ever since the School of Knowledge did get changed to support draw and give Greed that little buff it needed to become pretty prominent. But since then, it's slowly seen a decline thanks to decks like the Karasumes everywhere, really, in blue, purple, and purple-red. But it's still pretty prominent, and it can still be devastating if played correctly. The School of Knowledge, of course, is the big sort of card to worry about here, as it's that sort of source that Greed needs to keep drawing cards and to keep their ramp sort of going. With them being ahead in gold, they're allowed to play more things, and that opens up for greater, swarm potentials from guys that you wouldn't expect to see played together. And of course, with this, you have cards that can be summoned, like Tyrannosaur. I know that's a popular card with green, yellow. And let me see, you also have a couple other things. Salahar Soldier is nice, that gets some extra attack. Let me check the pirates. What else you got? You do have Con Artist, that's a pretty good ramper. Some people like to play Treasure Hunt for the gold. I know that. Some people, I think, have played Plunder in their decks. I do know that. Plunder's an interesting one. But you guys kind of get the idea here. They're allowed to summon, Murder and Special Delivery. Those two can be possibly thrown in there. Some even go, I don't say some go with the Robins, but as well, the Heals and Crusaders that they add into this really sort of make their decks a problem. You have the Heals from Arbiter's Return. You have Monster Tamer. You even could have John V. Ever Monks, and even if they're feeling bold, Dramoths. But of course, another sort of prime reason why this deck is so powerful is that the ramp they're getting from Merchant's Estate is protected by that 5 health. It's pretty nasty, if I do say so myself. You don't see that 5 HP coming until it's on you, and most removal can't really kill it instantly. You're going to have to divert some sort of unit to really get rid of it, and sometimes that can be pretty tough, especially with 5 health, unless you got some wide AoE removal spells that can really hit it, like Special Delivery, Frozen Storm, etc. But I wouldn't say focusing on Merchant's Estate is the way to really counter this deck. Of course, the way you counter this is by hitting their draw source, and that's draw source being School. It's pretty low at 3 gold, and while they may try to buff it with cards like Bulwark, where you're giving all the surrounding buildings +2, making the School a 5, if you eliminate the School with a Disintegrate pretty early on, that leaves them at a disadvantage, because despite if they have that ramp from Merchant's Estate, they're not going to be able to support that with additional units that they would have gotten from the draw. So that's sort of where Greed sort of falls behind. If you take out the School, it really limits them to how much they could play in a turn, and gives you the chance to build up your own sort of army to push forward, that where it gets to the point where even if they come back and build a greater force, you still have your own army that you built up just because they fell behind. And of course, while they do have some interesting units, while they do play some heavy things with their ramping, it's just not going to be enough if that School of Knowledge is targeted pretty earlier on. But I will admit that they have somehow stayed prominent despite them being pushed down a bit by the Sume decks, again, blue-purple and purple-red. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare in the upcoming days, if they can still hold on to a solid spot in the meta. So we'll just have to see. Now, excuse me while I fix this weird technical issue, and then we'll transition into, I think the outro. We'll see. I think it is. Woo! Now with that weird technical bug glitch on my computer that I've seen we get a lot, we're going to call an end to the video. If you guys did enjoy, please be sure to leave a like, share with your friends, and comment down below what you thought of the analysis, if it was good, if it was bad. I hope to continue the series if you guys do find it helpful. Please do leave some feedback in the comments below. If you guys disagree with my list, like I said in the beginning as a disclaimer, these are my personal opinions. You can feel free, again, to tell me them in the comments below. I hope to do this series probably every 15th of the month to really get an assessment. And if things don't change, we'll still sort of go over and see how decks have improved, how decks haven't improved. But usually a month or so is a good time frame to assess where the meta is. So it'll be interesting to see this series move forward. And again, if you guys can, or if you guys want to help it, improve, leave some feedback down below. And if down there, and if you haven't subscribed, be sure to do so, because that shows support to the channel and helping it grow by clicking that subscribe button. So, with that being said, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Yeah, that should be right. So until next time, stay gaming.